Easter Sunday is supposed to be about family, about belonging. But this year, when I walked into the banquet hall, they pointed me not to the table with my siblings or cousins, but to the kids' table. Plastic chairs, paper napkins, surrounded by little ones half my age. I smiled politely, but inside, the sting was sharp. They thought I didn't matter. They thought I was small enough to push aside. But when the $12,000 bill for that lavish Easter dinner arrived, suddenly the kids' table was the only seat of power in the room. I've always loved Easter. Growing up, it meant sunrise church service, pastel dresses, and big family meals where everyone squeezed together at one long table. Back then, it didn't matter who sat where. We were family. But things change. Somewhere along the line, my place in the family shifted. I wasn't the youngest, but I wasn't the flashiest either. I didn't have the newest car, the highest salary, or the loudest stories. Slowly, I became background. This year, my sister organized Easter dinner at an upscale banquet hall. Chandeliers glittered overhead. Waiters in crisp uniforms carried silver trays, and the tables were set with fine china. I arrived early, wearing my best dress, a spring scarf I'd saved for special occasions. I expected to sit with my siblings, my nieces, my nephews, part of the group. But when I asked where my seat was, a cousin waved me toward the back corner. "We put you at the kids' table," she said casually, as though it were nothing. I looked. A small round table with plastic chairs and paper napkins, surrounded by restless children spilling juice boxes and flicking jelly beans. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. "Surely," I began, "there's been some mix-up." But she shook her head. "No, we just thought you'd be fine there." The humiliation burned my cheeks. Me, a grown woman, placed at the children's corner while the adults clinked wine glasses and laughed at the grand table. I smiled tightly, sat down, and folded my hands in my lap. The kids chattered, oblivious, while I pushed food around my plate. Every now and then I glanced at the main table, where my siblings toasted each other, not once looking my way. I felt invisible, diminished, a guest in my own family. But life has a funny way of balancing things, because later that evening, when dessert was cleared and the waiter brought out the check, the laughter at the grand table faltered. A leather folder was placed in the center. One of my brothers opened it, his face blanching. $12,000, he whispered. The chatter stopped. Forks froze. Eyes darted nervously around the table, and just like that, the room shifted. The people who had relegated me to the kids' table suddenly looked very, very small. Because when responsibility walked in, all eyes turned toward the person they had overlooked, toward me. The silence after my brother read the number was thick, almost comical. Just minutes earlier, the main table had been roaring with laughter, clinking glasses like royalty. Now they sat frozen, eyes wide, mouths shut. $12,000? My sister repeated, her voice sharp. That can't be right. But the waiter, standing stiff beside the table, confirmed it. Yes, ma'am. That includes the full banquet, drinks, service, and gratuity. Payment is due tonight. My brother pushed the folder away like it was on fire. We should split it, he muttered. For a moment, heads nodded, but then someone whispered, "Split 12,000? That's over 300 each." The nod stopped. Excuses started rolling in, fast and desperate. I left my wallet at home. I only brought enough for parking. My paycheck hasn't cleared yet. It was almost laughable, watching the same people who had just ordered bottles of wine and prime rib suddenly act like paupers. The waiter stood patiently, but the tension grew unbearable. Finally, my cousin glanced around the table and said, "Maybe one person should cover it and we'll pay them back later." The words hung heavy. Everyone avoided eye contact, until slowly, inevitably, their gazes shifted. Past the glittering glasses, past the half-empty dessert plates, toward the corner table, toward me. The same me they'd dismissed hours earlier, shuffling me to sit among children with juice boxes. I felt their eyes burning into me, silently demanding. My sister cleared her throat. "You've always been good with money. Maybe you could, just handle this?" I set my fork down deliberately. The children beside me went quiet, sensing the tension. I folded my napkin, stood, and walked toward the main table. "Tell me," I said softly, my voice carrying in the silence. "Why me?" They shifted uncomfortably. My brother mumbled, "Because you're responsible. You've always been the practical one. We know you can manage it." I let out a dry laugh. Responsible enough to raise kids without help. Responsible enough to save when no one else bothered. Responsible enough to sit at the kids' table while you all played royalty. But when the bill comes, suddenly I'm the adult again? Faces flushed. My sister stared at her lap. My cousin fidgeted with her glass. Not one of them could meet my eyes. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had treated me like a child all evening, but now, when the real grown-up work appeared, they all turned to the person they'd humiliated. The waiter cleared his throat politely. "Will this be together or separate?" The room stayed silent. I took the leather folder from the center of the table and opened it. The number glared up at me, bold and undeniable. $12,000. And in that moment, I knew I had a choice. I could walk away and let them stew in their own arrogance. Or I could pay it and teach them a lesson they would never forget. The folder felt heavy in my hands, heavier than $12,000 should. I looked around the table, at my siblings, my cousins, my in-laws, all suddenly very small in their fine clothes and polished shoes. I set the folder down and spoke clearly. "You put me at the kids' table. You laughed. You dismissed me. And now when the adult responsibility shows up, suddenly I'm the one you look to?" My sister squirmed. "We didn't mean anything by it." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You meant to remind me I didn't matter. You meant to show me where I stood. Well, here's where I stand now." I pulled a checkbook from my purse, the same purse they'd mocked as cheap last Christmas, and laid it on the table. Gasps rippled through the room. "You see this?" I said, holding up my pen. "I can write a check right now, enough to cover the entire $12,000. But before I do, I want you all to sit with this truth. You treated me like a child, yet the child is the only adult at this table." The room was silent. Even the waiter seemed frozen. My brother leaned forward, desperate. "Please, just pay it. We'll pay you back later." I arched an eyebrow. Later. That's a word I've heard my whole life. Later will include you. Later will celebrate you. Later will respect you. Well, later never comes. A hush fell so deep I could hear the children behind me fidgeting in their chairs. Finally, I bent over and signed my name across the check. I slid it into the folder and handed it to the waiter. "Here, it's paid." Relief washed across their faces, but I wasn't finished. I straightened, my voice firm. "Don't thank me. Don't call me generous. Call me what I am, the one who carried this family when it mattered. You may have the main table, the wine glasses, the fancy chairs, but respect isn't bought with seating charts. Respect is earned." My sister's eyes glistened, shame replacing her smugness. My cousin whispered, "She's right." I turned to leave, pausing only once. "Enjoy your Easter. It's the last bill I'll ever pay for people who treat me like I don't belong." The waiter disappeared with the folder. My family sat stunned, mouths half open. No applause this time. And as I walked back past the kids' table, the one they thought was beneath me, I realized something powerful. Sometimes being underestimated isn't a weakness. Sometimes it's the perfect setup for the lesson they'll never forget. Because I didn't just pay $12,000. I bought back my dignity, and they'll never look at me the same again. The days after Easter were quiet. Too quiet. For years, my phone had only buzzed with invites when someone needed something, help with a recipe, a ride, a babysitter. But now, the silence felt different, heavy, ashamed. Then the messages started trickling in. My cousin wrote, "I'm sorry we put you at that table." It was thoughtless. My sisters sent a text, "Thank you for covering the dinner. I don't know what we would have done." But none of those words erased the sting. They wanted forgiveness without truly owning the humiliation they caused. A week later, my brother stopped by. He stood awkwardly on my porch, no wineglass in hand this time, no smug grin, just him, shifting nervously. "I've been thinking," he admitted, "about what you said, about how we treated you. You're right, we've taken you for granted." I didn't say anything. I let him sit in the silence he'd earned. Finally, he added, "I don't know if we can ever make it up to you, but I want to try." I nodded, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Respect doesn't start with big gestures, it starts with small ones. A chair at the main table. A call that isn't about money. Listening instead of dismissing. That's how you try. His eyes softened. "I understand." And from then on, something changed. Slowly but surely. At the next family gathering, there was no kids' table shoved into the corner. They put everyone together, one long stretch, just like the Easters of my childhood. And when I walked in, they didn't wave me to the side. They pulled out a chair near the center, waiting just for me. The children noticed too. One leaned over and whispered, "Grandma, you're at the big table now," and giggled. I smiled, not because of the seat itself, but because of what it represented. It wasn't about the $12,000. Money comes and goes. It was about being seen, being valued, being acknowledged. For years, they'd mistaken my quiet presence for weakness. They thought frugality meant insignificance. They thought silence meant irrelevance. But silence can be powerful. Silence, broken at the right moment, can echo louder than any laughter. And on that Easter night, my voice finally carried. Now, when I think back, I don't feel bitterness. I feel strength. Because I realized something vital. Sometimes you have to let people underestimate you. Let them dismiss you. Let them laugh. And then, when the moment comes, show them who you truly are. Not to gloat, not to shame, but to remind them that respect is not given. It is earned. And once it's earned, it cannot be taken away, no matter what table they try to put you at. In the end, Easter wasn't remembered for the decorations or the desserts. It was remembered for a $12,000 bill and the lesson it carried. They tried to shrink me down to the kids' table. But when responsibility arrived, suddenly I was the only one tall enough to handle it. It wasn't about the money. It was about dignity, about proving that respect isn't tied to where you sit, but to how you stand when it matters most. So let me ask you, have you ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or treated as if you didn't matter, only to prove everyone wrong in a single moment? How did it feel when the tables finally turned? Share your story in the comments and stay tuned for more tales where quiet strength takes the spotlight.